I'll call this meeting to order of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. And we have a motion for an approval of tonight's agenda, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. This is Ginger.
I'll go with the move from Mr. Bossy, seconded by Ginger. All in favor, Mr. Bossy? Aye. Ms. Andrews?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Payer?
Present.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Approval of the minutes, draft minutes of August 2nd, 2022. Are there any suggested revisions? Not hearing any. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Scott Anderson's motion to approve.
Can we have a second, please?
I'll
Second.
second it, Mr. Chairman. This is Ginger.
Motion's been made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Brace. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
I'll abstain as I left early.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Payer,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well. Nothing under the chairman's report tonight. It's one question, Mr. Brace. Do you know if our previous meeting was aired on YouTube? Had a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, so with the previous meeting, what happened, and I don't know how it happened, but the Sconset Advisory Board to the HTC, their August 1 meeting was placed in our spot. So when I went to do the minutes, I couldn't do the minutes because that was there. And I emailed, what's her name, Florencia Rulo, with the town, and I'm waiting to hear back. So,
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Green Department report. Not seeing any
Nobody.
representation. Do you know of any, Mr. Brace?
no, I don't. And Natural Resources is not here as well.
Right, so nothing under Natural Resources report tonight either. Public comment on marine and natural resources reports. Allow it if there is any. Old business, excessive sand and scallops, dredging plan, any new discussion? We'll wait for a dredging plan from Natural Resources. The first Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board quarterly report to the Select Board. Any discussion? This is
I haven't done it yet.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Brace.
Too busy in August, like
Yeah.
a lot of us.
Well, and this is something new that we'll be doing, so I imagine we'll, be sharpening pencils on this, so. Goals and objectives. Any discussion specifically from new members at this point, Mr. Anderson or Mr. Payer?
I'd like to look into a little bit of the European green crab issue.
Reading my mind.
Well, because I actually went to something that was put on Sustainable Nantucket. And they did a green crab crush, which is a natural fertilizer. So you've heard this before. So European green crabs came over in the 1800s in the bilge water. And are now definitely in Nantucket Harbor and also, I believe, in Nantucket Harbor. And for $10, you can get a lifetime permit to catch them. And the yield is about, in the traps, different sizes, about 70 per night. So green crabs are also, they eat eelgrass, which is, throw on that to the other problem we have with eelgrass. So I'd like to do a little bit more research and see what's going on with that and, get my license and crush green crabs for natural fertilizer.
I think that would be a wonderful homegrown business. You might reach out to the land council. They've been studying the green crab. Talk to Carl Sherlin. He has done some trapping and actually has some traps. We'll certainly add this to our agenda
Good.
for the next meeting. Any other discussion, goals and objectives? Moving forward to health of the harbors, stormwater runoff and harbor impacts. Just curious if anybody's had a chance to review the select board's public hearing on this that happened in the recent past. I have not been able to. I know it's been a busy summer, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could just say,
Mr. Bossie.
it doesn't really apply to stormwater runoff yet. That was kind of left out.
What was applied?
Pools, I think that was one of the biggest,
Draining of
the draining
pools.
pools, right? And so I think that was more the focus, was to manage some of those types of things rather than stormwater, which they simply put off to a future date. So
Okay.
that's something we want to keep. But that's also part of the Clean Water Coalition. So I think we're good. I don't think that's going to get too far from anybody's mind as we
Okay,
follow that.
well, good, and I'd like to just remind the board that this is very important, something that's gone on for quite some time and is simply exacerbated by the continuing development. And I think during the powerful storms we had in the beginning of the season, it just goes to show how much stormwater runoff can accumulate in the streets, end up in our harbors, and the ingredients that are in this runoff probably having a negative impact, safe to say. Any other discussion for stormwater runoff and harbor impacts? Not hearing any excessive lawn fertilizer use. Any updates or discussion or new information, please?
I think we really need our staff here. We need our harbor master. We need our natural resources department.
We do.
So it's been now 2 meetings since we haven't had any representation. So
I agree.
we need updates on all these items from them.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Board members, comments? FDA shellfish taking prohibition in mooring fields, another staff-related issue.
Do we know if that letter was ever sent?
Yeah, it
Is
was
the
sent.
letter? Okay,
It was sent, but I think what we were waiting for was hearing when the FDA was sending people down.
oh, right, they're gonna do
Jeff.
a visit, that's right, they're gonna do a visit.
Right, Jeff was still waiting to hear when they were coming down. We just we haven't had representation, so we don't know.
Okay,
Any other discussion in health of the harbors? Moving forward to new business, we have a presentation tonight about the Vineyard Wind proposed project.
So we're going to share our screen
Introduces.
with you, sure. Well, she's setting that up. I'm Amy DeCibio. I'm a summer resident here on Nantucket. This is Veronica Bonet. She's a summer resident also. We're both board members of the Residents Against Turbines, Back Residents Against Turbines organization. Behind us is Ellen Mayo. She's a year-rounder and born and raised here, and also a board member. And lastly, Val Oliver, who is on her way, who I'm sure most of you know, born and raised on Nantucket, and the founder of Back Residents Against Turbines and our president.
What's your last name, Amy?
Val Oliver, spelled like Oliver Twist, Oliver.
Okay.
And we just, first of all, want to thank you, Andy, in particular you. Thank you for allowing us to come tonight and to do our presentation for you guys. I think you're an important
You're welcome.
voice in the
Thank
community,
you,
so we
entire
appreciate the
board.
time.
I just want to double check this for the rest of our members hearing us. Mr. Payer, Ms. Andrews, Mr. Franzuta, you hearing everything okay?
I'm hearing. I can't see if there's something on the screen, but I can certainly hear.
Okay,
It's coming up now, so. It should be there.
Mr. Franzuta, are you with us?
yes.
Thank you.
I mean, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ginger.
I can't see anything because I'm talking on a phone that doesn't have internet connection.
Of
So,
course.
so I can only, no matter what you're putting on, I can only hear what's said.
Okay,
So that's, I realize that's a
Jen.
limitation, but if there's some important visual, then I hope someone would describe it to me.
Okay, we'll do our best as we go through.
I think they should probably get it to you as well, send it to you.
We're happy to send the presentation to whomever needs.
We
it.
can do
Oh,
that.
okay, thank you.
Give copies as well.
Okay, so
Yeah.
can everybody else
Send
see it
to my
okay?
email.
And others who are viewing, they can see it, correct? Okay, great. All right, Veronica, you want to go to the next image? So just to begin here, this has our whale's tail photoshopped into this, but this is actually an image that was produced by Boehm. This is the view from Ladies Beach on Nantucket. It's a rendering of what they anticipate one of the proposed wind farms will look like, just to give you an idea. Just to back up, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, I'm sure you guys all know what that is, was created during the Obama administration, and their mission is to responsibly develop the ocean for energy. During the last years since it was created, they have created lots of lease areas along the East Coast from Maine to the Carolinas, and they have all been auctioned off and all purchased by foreign energy conglomerates. This viewing here, this rendering here isn't really showing the full picture. We'll explain a little more about that later, but you will also be able to see substations, platforms, and vessels as time goes on. So you can switch to the next one. Okay, so the Vineyard Wind project is the first project. It's the blue Pac-Man looking like image in the middle. You'll see Nantucket Island to about 3 o'clock, and at about 11 o'clock, Martha's Vineyard. I know you guys know this as well as anybody else. The blue Pac-Man area covers about 85 square miles. It consists of 85 turbines, each turbine requiring about a mile of ocean space. And as you can see, the mileage, it'll be about 14 miles off of Nantucket's coast. The unfortunate thing about this is this project is located right smack where the North Atlantic right whale, where its safe haven is. So that's something that our organization is very concerned about, but there are other issues as well. One other thing to note here, that this has been viewed as a standalone project through the permitting process. They're not really considering the other projects that are coming behind it. We'll talk about that a little bit more lately, in a minute later. Go ahead, Veronica. You're on the wrong one. That one. So this one here, just to zoom in a little bit and show you about a turbine. In the middle there, you'll see the highlighted area. That's a rendering into scale of what the turbine looks like at Nantucket High School. Above that, or to the left of that and above it, is a rendering of what the proposed turbines were like initially. These things really now, the plans are calling for turbines that are closer to 1,000 feet. You can see the John Hancock Tower on the left. These things are very large. They are pile driven into the ground with a steel support, a monopile in this case. The bases are filled with cement or made of cement, and they are filled with lubricating oil. Just as an FYI, cement is one of the most carbon intensive processes that there is. The blade diameter is roughly 2 football fields in length, just to give you an idea of the size. The rotors contain rare earth magnet minerals. That's how they harness the wind and make it into energy. And they will be outfitted with lights. Their own construction and operation plan shows that they will have lights and some reflective material to protect vessels from striking them. And we'll talk a little bit more about the other kinds of lights that are potentially going to be on them later. Again, there will be substations out there for construction, and also during the operation process, they use the substations to jack up the voltage so they can transmit power to the shore. The lifespan on these is projected at roughly 20 to 25 years. It's important to know that each year these turbines are in effect, they lose efficiency. So they become less and less able to provide energy at any kind of substantial level as their life expectancy dwindles, and then they have to be removed. And the question is, where do they go? They are filled, as I said, with toxic, non-recyclable materials. So I think that's just a concern that everybody should keep in mind. You can switch to the next one, Veronica. So I think one just thing we should understand is that I think a lot of people out there in the world confuse renewable with green. Wind is 100% renewable, but as we just even started to talk about, there are a lot of elements to this that are far from green, just starting with all the materials we discussed, but also that there will be vessels out there, there will be high voltage cabling that interconnects the turbines and also brings these things to shore. They are very disruptive to the ocean and to the ocean floor. According to the data in its own construction operations plan, the developers have said that, you know, there are certainly going to be adverse effects, and unfortunately, what those actually amount to have been redacted, so the public doesn't have an opportunity to see what that is. Okay. So we started with the little blue Pac-Man here. That is joined by the rest of the projects that are coming. That's now a little green Pac-Man in the northeast corner of that grouping. You'll see all of the other projects that are coming behind. Nantucket looks pretty tiny. This is a 1,600 square mile power plant that will be off of our oceans, consisting of 1,600 turbines. There are, as I said, we'll mention a little bit more about the cabling, but this is a very, very large project. Go ahead, you can switch to the
It
next
actually
one.
doesn't stop there.
No, it
I've
doesn't.
seen the graphics going all the way down. to
We're
West
coming.
Carolina.
They're coming.
Yeah.
That's just the one off Nantucket. You're 100% right. So this is on a map that I'm sure you'll all recognize. These are fishing charts or depth charts that you guys all use. You know how to use them much better than I can, but you can see these are just north of the fishing or the shipping lanes, and they really go, you know, within 14 miles of our coast. This is just a very big area. I spoke to a guy that I don't know if any of you know, Mike Pierdenach. He's the vice chair of the Massachusetts Fishing Advisory Committee. He's also on the New England Fishing Management Council, among a million other things. And I wanted to talk to him because I know a lot of the fishermen were concerned about what does this mean for us, even just the recreational fishermen. And the answer is that we sort of don't know. During the construction phase, there will be setbacks, but I think that that's really to be determined. This project will go on for decades. I mean, this is probably going to be a 30-year project putting all of this stuff in. So it'll be extremely disruptive to fishermen, but more importantly, very disruptive to the marine life out there. It'll be, you know, noisy. We'll see vibrations. It'll be vessel traffic out there. It'll just probably be pretty dirty. And I assume that the dirt that will be, you know, dredged up from the bottom of the ocean and coming from these ships, we'll see on our beaches as well. You can flip to the next one. So we talked a little bit about cabling. This is the cabling from this project. You'll see how many cables go right through the Muskega Channel to land on shore on the Cape. There's also several big cables that'll go around the east side of Nantucket, around Sconset. This is high voltage stuff that is plow driven under the seabed. They say about 6 feet under. They can't go too deep because they have to maintain, you know, some amount of coolness. If they go down too deep, they heat up and then they fry. The problem that they have by being not too deep also is that you guys all know the bottom of the seafloor is a dynamic space. So we know that they've had a lot of trouble keeping the cabling underneath, like just the 5 little ones off of Block Island. That's been a big concern. What else do I want to tell you? Again, this plow driving process is disruptive. So not only will the construction of the power plants themselves be an issue, but while they're plow driving the cables, this is going to go on for a long time. These are all different projects, so I assume these will be different rounds of cables being laid. The next one just shows sediment plumes. This is just taken from NASA. I believe this is in the North Sea. If you look down, the white dots are turbines, and you'll see the sediment plumes that are clearly making the ocean pretty murky and pretty difficult for animals that have to breathe through gills.
Can you explain what creates this sediment plume?
Just the fact that there's a post there and currents, it just creates sediment plumes. So I'm not a marine biologist, but I know that I wouldn't be able to explain the science behind it, but that's just being taken by motion.
It's a continuous effect. Thank you.
Well, when the tide or the current would change.
Yeah, it might go in different directions, but it's pretty, yeah, if things are moving.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Andrews,
if I could just interrupt briefly, is that when you have a hard structure, the energy is that where the energy is not absorbed, that energy is reflected into the substrate. In other words, if you have a rock in the ocean and a wave hits it, the wave just doesn't stop. The energy of that wave motion is transferred. That
Thank
would
you.
be a reason
For
for the
explaining that.
turbulence.
Thank you. Next one. This next one just talks about sound. I think the bottom left corner sort of nails it. Much more research is needed, yet we keep moving along with these projects. Unfortunately, the permitting process just keeps moving forward, even though that they are saying themselves, this is a NOAA fisheries slide, that much more research is needed. We know that the sound from operations of turbines makes humans, on land, makes humans ill. There have been hundreds and hundreds of projects across the United States shut down because communities don't want to deal with the sound. It makes people ill. So imagine what this is going to do in the water. So again, I think this looks pretty detrimental. Along with sound is, let's go back to you can stay here. We can talk about what's happening during the pile driving. So this is something that Andy and some others had asked. I'd heard about this recently. Pile driving is something that is, hang on, I just want to look at my notes here. They're saying that it'll be 35 to 65 hammers per minute when they're pile driving. And the hammering goes on for hours and hours and hours just to get one pile into the ground. It's also dependent upon what the ground is, depending on what they hit underneath the surface. So it could take days to put in a pile with a steady beat. We actually brought a sound. Can you connect that when you're ready? We can even put that on if you want. No rush. We can do it at the end. But we have just to give you an idea of what the sound is like. Right now, they're planning on doing this from dawn until dusk. Orsted, one of the developers, is looking to do this 24/7. And this is stuff that can be heard miles and miles away. We know that whales can hear things, 10,000 miles away, but this will be a very steady, very disruptive sound to whales and other marine life. We happen to be fixated on the whale with our organization primarily, but any animal out there, this is going to be really disruptive. I'm sorry, Veronica, so we're going to do it at the end. We can wait to do that. So this is another, okay, next one. So in terms of, again, much more research is needed here. NOAA Fisheries is saying, it's unknown, but these turbines may affect things like waves, currents, weather patterns, fog, and water temperature. So I keep wondering, is Nantucket never going to have fog again? Well, we always have fog. Neither option is good here. We need fog. We don't need it all the time. So they're also wondering about temperature. So here we're worried about, climate change and too much and too much warming. Well, this is absorbing all of the wind out of the ocean. Is this rising temperatures locally in the water? We don't know. So we really don't know the impacts on a local level, and we really don't know it on a regional level. You can actually go to the next one, because this is really what's happening. This is the United States East Coast from Maine down to Charleston, South Carolina. There are many more projects planned. This is an older map. More things have been permitted since this map came out. So you can see that this could really materially change weather, frankly. Next thing we want to talk about is EMFs. Electromagnetic frequencies are, again, more research is needed. This is their own slides. But when we have EMFs, what does this do to animals that use echolocation? So for example, does it disrupt their navigation? Does it disrupt their predator detection? How does this impact their communication? I think this is something we should be really concerned about, and we know what it does to our things, because this next slide shows what it does to radar on a fishing boat. That's from a fishing boat in the North Sea. So a lot of the typical radar that's out there can't operate with the EMFs between the cabling and the rotating rotors. Additionally, what it does to marine life on this next one, this came from an article, again, from the North Sea, just showing deformed lobsters they were finding that can't swim and they are attributing it to the frequencies, basically the radiation coming from the cables. So next one, this is the sticky part of the presentation. I always feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about this, but we're going to go for it. Nantucket, not this part of it, but Nantucket is the largest and one of the oldest national historic landmarks in the United States. It's a very important place in our history. We have not only Section 106 status, but the forefathers around here were smart enough to push for 110F status, which really gives us the most stringent protection that there is. And we are grateful to all the people on Nantucket that serve on the historic commissions and the HDC, like Val and others, that have kept this place beautiful. But the reason that we have this status is not just the architecture and the streetscapes. It's also due to the seascapes. The view shed is extremely important. You can go to any beach and look out on this island, and it looks pretty much like it did back in the day.
Can I just say
yes.
something?
Yes.
Okay. When you stand on the shore on a clear day, the furthest you can see out over the ocean is 11 miles before sea the curvature of the earth. So the closest they're gonna be is 13 miles, is that correct?
Yeah, but actually they're 1,000 miles tall. They're not level. And so that is something to remember. And I also know that like,
Plus-
if you're at
plus-
Great Point,
plus,
you can
excuse
see the
me,
cape.
excuse
Sure,
me.
sorry.
Plus, we have the fog that you love. And most of the time, it's hazy here in the summertime. So most of the time, we're not gonna see much of them. We're not gonna, it's not like they're gonna be just over there like a flagpole. You might see a little bit of the top of them, but
Well, this is why we chose this image. So this
Okay.
image was provided by Mayflower Wind, which is in fact a little further away than Vineyard Wind. It's an image that is projected as if you were standing on the shore of Ladies Beach. Now, this image exists. You can go to the Town of Nantucket's Wind Work Group page and look for the images from Mayflower Wind. And they give them to you from all over the island. And they show you in 4 different kinds of weather from Cisco, what they're going to look like,
Including like a hazy day and. bad
including a
weather day.
hazy day, a clear day, because you're right about the arcing of the earth,
yep,
but at 1,000 feet tall, it,
or 800 something feet tall.
Well, now actually the
No,
new ones are more
no,
like
the
1,000.
Mayflower winds will be 1,000.
Yeah, they've,
Okay.
the new, that you're 100% right. That's when they started doing this permitting process, that it was about the height. But as the new components are being released, they're looking more and more at even larger ones.
1106 to be precise.
So I guess,
But the first
what's
vineyard,
important
the
about,
first Vineyard Wind ones will be 853 feet tall.
yeah, but other ones are coming in. Yeah.
Anything after that is taller.
So now I think what's important, the reason I'm bringing this up, the view shed up, because it all relates back, it'll all relate back to actually the health of the oceans. It all comes back to roost. So if you go to the next one, this is what the dark skies look like in the North Sea. So we will have lighting out there. As I said, we need to protect the vessels, we need to protect aircraft. So this is going to be quite a different look on our beaches. This is really the sticky part that we're coming up to. Actually, I got ahead of myself. It's really this. So what's a bummer for Nantucket is that there's a good neighbor agreement that I think a lot of people don't know about. And this was an agreement signed between the town of Nantucket and the Vineyard Wind project. It was actually the town of Nantucket, the Mariah Mitchell Association and the Nantucket Preservation Trust got together to try to, have best and clear heads to come up with the best solution for our island. And on the other side, Vineyard Wind. The attorneys representing the island were cultural heritage partners. And really, I think Cultural Heritage Partners says that they protect national historic landmarks, and that is really supposed to be the thrust of their business. I'm not really sure what transpired because these meetings happen behind closed doors, but I'm not sure how much protection was attempted. I think what they really kind of moved to was mitigation and saying, here, what are the things we can do for Nantucket, despite the fact that you have this National Historic Landmark status. So what they offered and what we'd signed off on was that Vineyard Wind would remove the first row of turbines, which amounted to, I've heard different numbers, either 3, 4, or 5 turbines, but a
3.
handful of turbines.
They
Val
were
says 3.
637 feet tall at that time.
Right. So they have now grown. So really, that is not a big concession. They said that they would paint the turbines gray again. I'm not sure what other color they would be, but that's one thing, to hope that they would blend into the background. And then they said they would provide an advanced detection lighting system, which that technology is not fully developed. And it's nothing that's been approved by the FAA, but it was sort of like as I was saying, like a clap on, clap off. So like if airplanes show up, the lights would blink on and then go off. But there will always be vessels out there. So despite that, they have to be lit. They also will have some reflective paint on them. And then they would give us some money as well. So I believe the number is about $16 million that would go into this fund that could be distributed to other organizations around the island. And then an undisclosed amount of that.
That's 16 million over the life.
Over 4
that's-
projects.
Right. Well, it's also unfortunate because I believe that the attorneys take,
Hold on.
yeah, that one.
Hogan,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
you guys are presenting.
Yeah.
The audience will have a chance to speak. If you guys could not chime in while they're talking, while we're
Okay.
talking.
There,
Okay.
she's part of us,
We're
but,
just, we're
okay,
not a regulatory board. We
Okay.
still operate, hold on.
sorry.
We still operate the way the bigger boards in the town operate. So you guys will have a chance to speak.
She's actually with us. Is
I
that okay?
understand, but she's in the audience. You guys are presenting.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
We'll hear to that, thanks. We don't know is what, and again, I don't know how much it totally matters, but it does matter some, that the attorneys take a percentage of that. We don't know what the agreement was here on Nantucket. We've seen the agreement in other municipalities and it was 27% that they took. So I'm assuming that what we ended up with is probably less than that, but I don't actually know that for sure. So the real bummer of this whole thing is in return what Nantucket did. Nantucket said that we would support this project at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And that despite the fact that we had this incredible national historic status, that we would proclaim that we are okay with the mitigation and that is enough, despite the fact that it jeopardizes that. So where it's a shame is that it could jeopardize that, but it also has sort of silenced the conversation on Nantucket. When we talk to folks here about this project, most people have no idea that it's even happening, or they confuse it with the Cape Wind project that was going to happen in Nantucket Sound, or they think this is just a done deal and there's nothing we can do about it. So that is, the problem is that the conversation just isn't happening. Some people may think this is great, others may think it's terrible, but we are seeing, legislators around the state saying that everyone on Nantucket is fully supportive of this project. And I would say that 95% of the people that we've spoken to don't even know that this is happening. So I think that that's something that should be figured out. On the next slide, this is part of the confusion. So you guys remember when Cape Wind was trying to put a project in Nantucket Sound, and there was a lot of press around it, Ted Kennedy and the Koch brothers, and there was a big to-do about keeping it out of the Sound. And they were effective over a long period of time. They were able to shut the project down. But what is interesting is this organization still exists today. And among its supporters, in the top right corner, you'll see the town of Nantucket. There's many others on Nantucket. This is an overlay, but you also see on the bottom there, Vineyard Wind. So they're also supporting this organization, which is strange until you look a little bit more deeply on their website and you see that this Save Our Sound organization is actually supporting the projects off the South Shore of Nantucket. So they're not in favor of them in the Sound, but they are totally supportive of them happening off the South Shore. So I think that that's, again, confusion and keeping the conversation quiet. It's a very unfortunate situation, I think. Just switching gears here for a minute, these black dots just show us where we've seen whales. A lot of them you see right off the South Shore of Nantucket. This is a shame, again, right where the projects are going to be. On the next slide, it's just a big plug for Mother Nature and the whales together. It shows how much oxygen or carbon dioxide that whales sequester. That truly, Mother Nature can do its job here on this entire, greenhouse gas thing. They can really do a pretty good job. Unfortunately, humans interfere and we create more of it than we need, but whales really can do the job, or a lot of the job. You can switch to the next one. Unfortunately, again, why the conversation isn't happening is big organizations that should be out there screaming about this are taking money from the wind companies. Even our beloved New England Aquarium, whose mission is to protect the North Atlantic right whale, has unfortunately taken money from the wind companies. And, they say it's so that they can have a seat at the table and help make some decisions. I would question how well that's going, despite, when you look at where these wind farms are being installed, but also things like the Sierra Club, Mystic Aquarium, Audubon Society, a lot of them have partnered and taken money from the wind companies, and it's effectively silenced them. So again, it's hard when they are sending signals to decision makers, even our own local decision makers, when they're compromised, it sort of messes up the entire system. Again, you can go to the next one. Just really, these are some things that we've just noticed that people that we talk to seem to be confused upon, which would make sense because there's really not much put out about this. But number one, and it's not too late. I think that it would be good if Nantucket could force a conversation and have people here talk about this, the pros and the cons of this, so really good decisions could be made. Again, these are federal waters, but the court of public opposition matters, and it's why projects like Vineyard Wind have come in here and spent time and money trying to keep us, only positive about it. Lastly, the next slide just talks about our lawsuit really quickly. We have a lawsuit against BOEM and NOAA Fisheries, just saying you're not following your own endangered species laws. You're not following the Endangered Species Act and the National Environmental Protection Act, and that really you need to come up with better solutions and look at this project holistically and look at all of the impacts across all of the projects and find all of the data. As we pointed out earlier, so much of this has not, research is still not there. So lastly, just wind energy is not reliable and it's not cheap. This is more about, how this affects our island, but I do think you should make sure to follow what's happening in Germany and in Europe and in California. It's not probably going to be the solution, and this is a pretty big price to pay for something that just may not really cut it as a full-blown alternative. So that's really all we have to say. We want to thank you guys so much for your time. I don't know if you have any questions, you can reach us later. I know you want to keep your meeting going, but thanks so much again for your time.
Thanks for the presentation.
We have time for questions if any board members have anything they'd like
How
to.
much of the energy is coming back to Nantucket?
So it'll go, none of it comes directly here. I think there was a misnomer that there was a cable coming here. That is not the situation. You could see from that map, it'll go into the grid. And then you will buy your energy the same way. But in places where wind is part of the grid or a significant part of the grid, energy prices climb. They don't diminish. Or decrease. It's really
Anybody?
I
important
have some
to
questions.
give you guys these maps if you want these.
Mr. Payer?
Yes, I've been looking for a phone number for ACRAT. Is there somebody I can call on the telephone that is involved
Yeah.
with ACRAT?
And I don't
Give
know.
them my number.
Okay, go ahead, Val.
It's Val Oliver. 508-325-4319.
Could you hear that?
54.
325.
4319.
So 508-325-4319.
Yep.
And that's to Val Oliver.
Okay. Okay, got it. I have a couple other comments.
Sure.
Yes, there was a publication called The Dismal Economics of Offshore Wind Power. And what it points out is that, yes, the cost per kilowatt hour for offshore wind is going to be very, very, very high because of the maintenance involved, because of the pile driving, because of the cost to fabricate and install these horrible things offshore, and the constant diesel marine powered boats that have to come out and service them over the years. That's number one. It's going to be very expensive per kilowatt hour. Number two, there's a big question about whether the greenhouse gases created by fabricating these giant turbine towers, the fiberglass windmills that turn, all the laying of the offshore cables and the constant maintenance creates more greenhouse gas than they will ever save. That's question number two. Question number three, it's been recently discovered by the British, I'm not sure who, that whales have what are called spindle cells in their neurons. So do porpoises, so do seals. These marine mammals, not fish, mammals who breastfeed like human beings have emotions. Spindle cells are associated in humans with emotion, fear, love, hate, caring. Yes, whales care. Yes, whales have emotions. Number four, when we eradicated most of the ocean's whales in the 1800s, not only us, but New London, New Bedford, and many other whaling communities throughout the world, we almost eradicated the whales. You know what happened? By the year 1850, 60, there was a huge cholera epidemic worldwide because the phytoplankton that absorb sunlight and make oxygen in the water, They were decimated because phytoplankton feed off whale poop. There are so few whales left, there was no food for the phytoplankton. Therefore, the phytoplankton make oxygen. There's a thing called bacteria in the ocean. There are aerobic bacteria, there are anaerobic bacteria. Aerobic bacteria feed on oxygen. Anaerobic feed on the lack of oxygen. When the whales were almost decimated and the oxygen level in the oceans would drop dramatically, the anaerobic bacteria took over, and anaerobic bacteria are associated with the cholera, who attach to the receptors of copepods and other marine life, creating, look it up, creating a worldwide cholera epidemic. As this woman said, we're not certain at all what the balance of ocean marine life means to the world, but I'll tell you, it means a lot more than we know about. And yes, we need to do a whole lot more research before we go on with this fiasco, idiotic, very expensive program to decimate the continental shelf of the United States. If I sound angry, I am. That's all I have to say at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Payer, and thank you for having a well thought out and prepared statement. Mr. Franzuto, any comments on navigation possibly?
He's on mute.
You can't tell if he's on.
He's on
He's
mute.
on mute,
Can you
but
guys-
maybe he's muted himself, so.
You guys are all done, right?
Oh,
Stop sharing.
sorry,
I
social
was-
media.
I was muted. Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
navigation would be a nightmare.
Okay, thank you.
You know, it would be bad enough during the daylight hours with decent visibility, but at night, you saw the radar plotter. I've seen that screenshot several times for the Cape Wind project when they were trying to sell that. And a mile spacing is not enough spacing for these guys to fish out there, much less safely navigate. When I come back from North Carolina in a couple of weeks, I'm going to take a picture of the wind farm that's on Route 17, just north of where I live. Now it's land-based, but they have, I believe, 65 turbines that are in this 800-foot range. I'm going to take a photograph of it from the highway just to show the density of these things. But yeah, navigation would be a nightmare.
Thank you, Dave. Board members,
Mr. Chairman?
Ginger, please.
Yeah, one thing that has not been discussed are birds. And one of the questions that I had in my mind about wind and putting wind power generation offshore is, why would you put crucial infrastructure in your riskiest geographic location? Because we all know about our storms. And one possible theory that occurred to me was that we know from other wind installations that they have to be, that how they're sited is crucial to whether they damage birds or not. And if they're in the flyway, they're extremely damaging to birds. And one thing that, in order to prove a taking, which is an expensive thing that happens when you kill an endangered species, you have to have dead birds. And it's one thing to find dead birds in Altamont Pass, but it would be very difficult to prove in the ocean, because any dead bird that falls into the ocean would be, very quickly carried away by the tide and or consumed, or both. So it seems more like a regulatory evasion, because we know that the birds that take off from Nantucket coming from, say, Hudson Bay or as far away as Alaska, all the shorebirds, the terns, terns nest around here, but the birds that are migrating to South America take a direct route over over the ocean when they leave here. We have banding records and other observations. We can see the birds on radar and tell there's something called birdcast. You can actually, if you're a birder, or even if you're not, you can look at this website and it will tell you a mix of what species are traveling overhead and at what altitude. So something 1,000 feet high, if the birds are at 1,400 feet, that doesn't give them a heck of a lot of clearance, and they have to get up that high as well. So I consider that it would be a real nightmare for our endangered species. We've already lost a third of America's bird life, and this might take care of a good portion of the rest of it. So it looks like a very hazardous project for birds, and that the illegal taking of these endangered birds would be hard to prove, although Cornell is improving the techniques of monitoring birds with radar, and also their recording their contact calls so that we can get a better idea of the species composition of these flocks of migrating birds.
Thank you, Ginger. Mr. Anderson, you'll be next. Mr. Sibio would like to answer that.
Yeah, I just want to say that that is a concern of ours too, because that is a flight path for a lot of birds. And Mass Audubon on that screen, I know you're on the phone and you couldn't see it, but the Audubon Society is also an organization that has taken money from the wind companies. So it would, appear that probably that compromises their true opinions on what they believe on this. It just seems that all of these organizations are very, very silent about a project that will be very, very disruptive. And it doesn't mean everyone has to agree, but we should at least have conversation about this stuff. And it just isn't happening kind of for all the wrong reasons. So thank you for bringing that up.
I guess my concern is what type of scientific data can we get from you or your group to help support, I'll say, the domino effect of what might be more sand in the harbors, the water quality, especially with the coalition coming around too. There's more organizations that have concern. I think we have to back this with more factual data.
Yeah.
Not just on right whales, but
Well,
go
it's
down
a
the
whole
realm of
chain,
things,
yeah.
because we got to reach out to a lot of different people.
Well,
Get buy-in and education.
well, we'd be happy to continue the discussion with you and help secure that data. We have some, places where we can go and some folks that we can talk to. Some of these, there are some fishing organizations that are fighting back against this. I think I was mentioning earlier that there's a group out of Montauk and Rhode Island that are working on their own lawsuit against this. They're commercial fishermen, but they have a lot of data that would talk about this more than probably we would, but we are happy to help secure anything that, might help. Because it does seem that, it's all connected, right? So what happens 14 miles out will eventually end up in our harbor. It all, how this all works, I'm sure way better than I do, but these are all connected. And so I think following, the paper trail of the ecosystem will be super important. So anything we can do to help, we'd be happy to.
Mr. Bossi, anything you'd like to add or any questions?
No,
Mr. Chairman.
Right?
Yeah, I just want to remind us that our jurisdiction for this board is to the 3 mile limit. As far as I know, there's no commercial fisherman that goes out there and fishes. The one that was on our board was a lobsterman, and he has switched his permits to ground fishing in the Sound.
Mm-hmm.
There's one other guy I can think of who might go there. There may be charter fishermen there, but we don't have a large fishery like New Bedford
Right.
or Gloucester that's sending boats all in southern New England. So that's not really a concern. I want to say that National Grid pulled 2 35 megawatt cables to connect Nantucket for power starting in 1997. And there was no uprising outcry about how that's going to impact wildlife, how that might impact our.
Did that replace diesel here?
I'm not
I'm
finished.
sorry, I just went down.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to interrupt you if you want to.
Oh, I'm
interrupt me.
sorry. I
Okay,
didn't mean
well,
to. Sorry,
fine.
Peter.
You can ask me questions when I'm done.
Sure.
The first cable came across in 97, the next one came 10 years later, and now National Grid is saying we need another one, and there's nobody complaining except people who don't want any more power here on the island because it's a sort of, if you build it, they will come type of attitude.
Yeah.
If you go to the North Shore on a clear night and look over at the mainland, you can see the lights on the mainland. And so I don't ever recall that being something that came up as diminishing our National Historic Landmark status. I would ask you guys, if we can't put them where you want to put them, then where do we put them? I'm a supporter of wind. I hear what all my board members are saying, and I respect their opinions, but I've always been a supporter of wind. And so the Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound throughout the whole Cape Wind thing, I covered that writing for the Nantucket Independent, was always saying, let's put them south of us. They're much better out there. And that's why they're supporting it, because that's been their line the whole time. So, okay, so they don't work there. So where do they work then? Let's hear that. When I covered that for the paper, we learned that the lubricating oil in the turbines is mineral oil, a very innocuous, non-polluting oil. I'm sure there are every type of energy source that we can all think of. There's something bad about it. I'm not an advocate of burning coal anymore. I'm not an advocate of nuclear power. I'm an advocate of renewable energy, and no one's going to convince me otherwise. If there's a way we can make this better, that's great, but I want to hear where else it goes.
Well, I think it's great to have a conversation.
Hold on.
Sure.
Hold on. Okay. I don't think we're going to see him from Nantucket as much as we think. That's about what I got for now.
What did you, Peter? Peter,
What?
I didn't hear your last I didn't hear your last statement.
What did I start out at?
Just the last thing you said, I just didn't hear it.
They didn't think we'd see him.
I just don't think we're going to see him as much as we think. I think
Oh,
that,
see them. I'm sorry.
right. I think we're going to have more fog as the climate warms up. I think it's going to be hazier. I'd rather see wind turbines than oil come out of the ground. And, you know, I serve on the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. We created our sea level adaptation plan, and we're doing that because we're burning fossil fuels and putting that into the atmosphere, and the water is coming up fast. So I'd rather do something that, I know that wind turbines aren't perfect. I know that solar isn't perfect. I'd rather see other options. I want to hear from you guys where you think. If you say they don't belong there, hold on. We acknowledge you. We acknowledge you. I'm speaking. Okay, you guys tell me where they go. You showed up and down the coast of the United States where all the potential projects are. Then where are you guys going to put them? I'm all set.
Well,
Thank you, Peter.
Sure,
One at
Val.
a time.
yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak when we get up.
I'm gonna allow Mr. Bossy first.
Thank you. I'm hoping to put an end to the debate here. I appreciate the presentation. Peter said our purview was out to 3 miles. I actually disagree with that. We're the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. I don't want to see us get diluted by looking too far outside that and getting us involved in discussions that are
Right. That's what I was saying.
Right. And that's why I don't want to just get into a big debate here. I just think it's the wrong forum for a discussion like this, because honestly, I don't feel that this board has any say as a board, as an advisory board to the select board. It's just, it's no different than HDC going and saying, we don't want windmills, or we don't like how the scalloping season should be shortened because we don't believe. No, it's nothing to do with it. I disagree that what happens out there really impacts our harbor. Our harbor is, you can look at your own charts, and it's closed. It's really very closed in. So I'm saying I appreciate the presentation, and I appreciate and understand what this whole the point of this, but I just think we're talking to the wrong group. If we're gonna have a debate about it, it's the wrong group to debate it.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't. I don't see where this board would have any say in it, as a board. Individuals, that's fine. But as a board to the town, an advisory board to the select board, I don't see where we'd have any influence. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Actually, I'm seeing disturbance with cables within 3 miles. And I just got off the phone with Dan Pronk, who's probably about through Muskegon Channel right now, coming in from about 12 miles south. He wanted to attend tonight's meeting. Obviously, he can't, he's in his boat. If discussion continues to the next meeting, he'd like to come and speak. He said he's had such a good season. He has retracted his statement that he was getting out of the lobster business and is actually planning now to expand his lobster business. He'd like to get a larger boat, and he'd like to get another permit to add more traps to his collection. And I'll let him come in and say that himself if he wishes, but he asked me to quote him on that tonight. So, you know, as some of us know, or as all of you know, Mr. Pronk served here with us 1 term. He's basically our last commercial fisherman out of this port. And I believe strongly that this board holds a position to be an advocate for the fishermen that work from this port. So I'd like that to be taken into consideration tonight. If there are no other
I have
comments.
a comment.
Just one, I want to say that I agree with what Mr. Bossy was saying. It's kind of the point I was trying to make, that we're an advisory board. And whatever decisions are going to be made about how the town feels about this, the select board are going to say that. We can say our piece. But I think it's a bit after the fact. So,
Well, just a minute, please. Val, I will get to you. Mr. Brace, when I hear that comment that we're an advisory board, I feel diminished in a way. But our advisements are to be delivered to the select board and heard by the select board. Yes, we have no regulatory power, but at least our voice can be heard where we feel it necessary. And we spoke about this when Mr. Pronk was on board, before the town signed off on this. And I feel it's very unfortunate and also saddening that there was not discussion. We were not included in any discussion in this decision. Our voice was not heard at all. We did not know this type of meeting was taking place. And I feel it's simply a portion of proper discussion for this scale of project was skipped, eliminated from the process. And if we're coming in after the fact, if the horse has already gone from the barn, so to speak, so be it. But really, it's not, because construction has not been 100% permitted yet, and if enough studying were done to find out what all the negative effects could be, I think we might have more concern here on this board. That's just my opinion. Anybody else from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Bayer, quickly.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Bayer.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I think it is within the purview of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board to be concerned about the bird life that nests here on its way from the Azores or Caribbean to the north, because they could be affected by this offshore turbine project. It is within our purview to be concerned about the right whales in Nantucket Sound. I think that is within our purview. And even if we weren't to be concerned about the cost of energy to America, We should be. When I think about any project that might be an engineering project of this magnitude, and I don't like it, I have a solution. And my solution is American companies, states, and federal government should be spending more money on fuel cell energy. Dominion Electric in Bridgeport, Connecticut, built a large industrial fuel cell energy plant. I'm not in contact with them to find out what the cost per kilowatt hour is of that fuel cell plant. Fuel cells burn biofuel, and they give off hot water as a byproduct, no greenhouse gases. There are residential fuel cells that can be in people's backyards that can burn biofuel, if not natural gas, and give enough hot water to provide all the hot water needs of a family house. They're affordable, but they can be more affordable if governments and states start spending more money on them. As like the cost of everything, the IBM first computer encompassed a couple of blocks. They could put that computer in a small room today. Fuel cell energy, I think, is the best wave of the future, but states and city and town governments and residents have to start investigating that. So I had that comment because yes, there is another solution besides wind turbines, fuel cells.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Payer.
we should be concerned.
Ms. Oliver,
I was just going to say, we're not here to argue with anyone. We are here to share the information that I've gathered since 2019. And our lawsuit is simply about, give us the facts. Show us that you are in fact not going to be, the benefits outweigh the detriments, and we haven't gotten that. I have thousands of pages of construction and operation plans, if anybody is interested in reading them. You can also go on to BOEM's website and read them. We haven't been given the information, and I'd rather on the front end find this stuff out than when there's thousands and thousands and thousands of turbines, because Vineyard Wind is the only one permitted so far. We're trying to say, stop, do the proper research, and then you prove us wrong, by all means, continue. I have nothing against turbines personally, but nobody is asking those questions, and that is the problem. So whether you like them or you don't like them is irrelevant. We wanted to share the information we had. We do think that this is going to impact the harbor and fishing in the harbor, if that's the only fishing that you guys are concerned with. So thank you for having us, and thank you for listening. And I hope that you do take some time and do a little research and see for yourself that the questions aren't answered. So thank you.
thank you,
Thank you.
Valerie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna allow public comment out of order. If Ms. Mayo has something you'd like to add,
No, I don't talk.
Mr. Bissett, thank you. Thank you for attending.
Can I just say two things?
Please.
The BOEM website that Valerie mentions has all of the information for all of the projects based on where they are in the permitting plan. The Nantucket's offshore wind work group recently, at our request, literally in the last 3 weeks, has updated their page so that there's information by project and you can click through and see. The thing that's working in the benefit of the wind companies is a dearth of information and misinformation, and people not having all the information and having this idea that they must be good because they're renewable. And what we really want is for people on Nantucket to understand what the projects themselves are saying about it, what the government is saying about it. And if you go to those sources, you'll probably have some of the same questions that we do.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I ask one other question? I know you said you have 3 miles. Is it just 3 miles in any direction off the island, or how does that work?
306 feet all around the island, 3 miles out is the jurisdiction of state and town government. From that point out to 200 miles is federal waters.
Sure.
And beyond that, it's international waters. So Nantucket, Nantucket
No,
Sound.
I don't, okay. And so what about Muskegon and Tuckernock? Same thing, correct?
Yep.
Because one thing to just consider, if you're looking to get involved, is the cabling that will go right through the Muskegon Channel. And if you look at those maps, it's closer to Nantucket than you think. So the cabling will be disruptive. I can't read those charts probably like you guys can, but you just may want to take a closer look that the cabling might come in into your purview.
And if you read the Good Neighbor Agreement, it requires the Concom to be supportive. And so there's already 5 cables going through the Muskegon Channel that have already gotten the nod, and more on the way.
You guys know about the tidal generator that's in the Muskegon Channel? The pilot project, there's a tidal generator.
Mhm.
Tides go one way, they go the other way. And it's a pilot project that the vineyard's doing with cables going to the vineyard. And not heard any complaints from anybody about that thing being in the water. So,
Interesting.
nor have there been any complaints of any damage or any environmental impacts of the cables going between Nantucket and Hyannis for our power. So I'm just putting that out
Fair
there.
enough, fair enough. But I just think it's something we should all look into.
Yeah.
But thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Just one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payer.
Moving forward, a new business, the Nantucket Clean Water Coalition discussion. Mr. Brace, do you have?
Yeah, I don't know if everybody got, I did send the letter, that.
Yes.
I don't know if you got it.
I didn't read it.
Yeah,
but just in case. This is the letter that they're sort of claiming what they're all about. And Andy and I thought we'd have this agenda item on here, so we could decide, do we want to be one of the supporters, and the supporters are on the back of the second page. Since a lot of what they talk about in the letter and what was mentioned in the article in Nantucket Current on August 31st is a lot of the material, a lot of the issues that we work on. I would think that we would definitely want to have our name on that list.
I'm surprised we were not approached beforehand, because this was already formed. And but certainly I believe this is someplace we should be included in. Mr. Bossy.
I'm just wondering if. Yes, these are all things that we absolutely are concerned with and we discuss all the time, but I'm wondering if maybe the reason weren't approached, and because we really should be analyzing what they come up with and
Yeah.
discussing what they come up with. And forming our opinion as to, we may disagree with some of the things they come up with.
Sure.
Right? There may be some things we may decide we believe they should focus in one area or another. That's what I'm saying. Fundamentally, we're not going to disagree with anything they're doing.
But I think that.
I think that's
Sorry.
why we shouldn't be on this list on the back. I think we should be analyzing what they're doing and coming to decisions and making recommendations.
Okay.
That's kind of how I saw it all. It's like, again, I don't think there's anything that we would disagree with that these people are doing. I think it's a great idea.
But I think within their group of all those groups that are part of this coalition, I believe they'll be like us. They'll be disagreeing as well.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So, yeah,
My only concern was will the town think it's okay that a public entity is part of this group?
right.
That was my
Or we should be
reservation.
the outside observer.
Yeah.
Which is what I believe we should be. But
So we would maybe
that's
ask
all.
Libby if that was cool for us to support them, and if not, then, yeah.
I believe we should at least invite some of their members to.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
presentation.
Absolutely. As this goes on, absolutely.
Any other suggestions, Mr. Brace?
No,
So something we should study over the next couple of
To
weeks.
separate sailor.
And we'll continue discussion on this in 2 weeks.
Do you want me to get a hold of Erica and ask the question in case we decide to sign up with them?
It'd be worth getting, I believe so.
Okay.
Board members on Zoom, comments,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Franzuto, please.
Yeah, I initially I was surprised that we weren't contacted about the formation of the coalition, but then in listening to Dave Bossie, I agree. I think I agree with Dave. We should be in a review and supportive role. I mean, there isn't anything in that document that we don't stand for or believe in. So I'm surprised that they formed this without talking to us, because we've worked closely with the land council, in the past, and all those other organizations for that matter. Was anybody else surprised, or it's just me being in a,
I was surprised.
I was surprised. At least to talk to us, like to tell, let us the word that it was happening.
yeah,
That's okay. I mean, that's okay.
because in the past, they've always asked for our support. And I don't believe we should be listed there, because I think we have a more of a subjective advisory supportive role. But we would be a strong entity to take whatever recommendations that they come up with to support and go to the selectmen to get something done. And that's the part that I'm a little surprised about. But I read it. I'll read it some more, but I think it's a great thing. I'm just kind of surprised at how it came about.
I agree with you 100%, Dave, and I believe it would be respectful of them to keep us informed
Most definitely.
at best. Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Well, I'm talking about the response of the select board to our letter. Is that what we're talking about? We sent a letter to the select board.
No,
We're not talking about.
No, sir.
We did send a letter to the select board, did we not?
Yeah, this is new business, Steve, on the Nantucket Clean Water Coalition. So this is not something we've discussed in the past or voted on to send a letter.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. If there's nothing else on this, we'll move forward. Coastal Resilience Advisory Board, an update, Mr. Brace?
And I don't have an update because we haven't had a meeting since the last meeting.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Hosier, anything? Probably muted, all right. Anything board members would like to add for our next meeting? Next meeting, September 20th, and then October 4th. There's nothing else to add to tonight's meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question of Peter?
Please.
Peter, is there a is there going to be a mandate or a stop to having the Zoom meetings, or is that going to be able to be continued?
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Dave, I believe it's the hybrid format is going to be able to continue at least until
Okay.
the middle of next year.
Oh,
is what
okay.
I was told.
I wanted to join in person today, but I wasn't ready for prime time. So I'll try and see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a good option because you're on the road and you go down south now and again, and
Well, that's
sometimes-
that's my selfish reason, because I want to participate, but I'd also like to see you guys too. But I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Dave, you look great and we see you there now. I think the option for Zoom should continue as long as possible. Out of respect for those who would prefer not to have any exposure. So hopefully it stays in place for quite some time because it doubles inconvenience for those whom are out of town. So good question. Thank you, Mr. Franzuto. If there's nothing else.
I have one comment. For our agenda for next meeting. I would like
Yes,
to
sir.
bring up the fact that the Conservation Foundation has brought up the project of using oysters to create an oyster reefs, right, to protect erosion. And I think this advisory committee group board should support that wholeheartedly.
We did,
Okay. So you'd like to have discussion on the oyster reef?
we did.
We did.
We did, we.
We
sent a letter
supported it.
supporting. Yep, that was last year.
Yep.
We did, or earlier this year, but I think right before the elections.
But unless there's another reef, where is this reef you're talking about, Mr. Payer?
One up. I believe it's the one up by Pulpus and Medawi Creek, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he didn't say where it was.
Oh.
He's-
They made a presentation to us and we
Right,
supported it very strongly.
Yeah, we did. We wrote a letter and we supported it, but he
I don't know if there's another one.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there another one?
Steve, come back, please.
He's gone, he's.
Well, we can put it on the
Yeah, so he's
agenda
gone.
and,
We can just bring him up to
Yeah.
date. That was before he was on the board.
Yeah,
right.
all right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn if that's what you're looking at.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
I
Andrews?
think she.
She's gone.
Ginger's gone.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you, everyone.
See people in person. Wow.
It is.
Actually have an audience.
Board meeting.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. You guys, thanks for all your work.
Take care.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Peter.
Thanks, Tommy.
Always a pleasure.